being an author gives you instant credibility. But you know what makes your book even more credible? The people you interview. On this episode, you're going to find out who to interview, how to get the most out of them, and how to make the most out of your book so you can write your book in a flash. Hi, I'm Dan Janal, the author of Write Your Book in a Flash. I've written more than a dozen books, and no matter where you are in the writing process, I can help. So let's get started. On today's episode, you're going to learn a lot of great things like why you interview people, who to interview, how to get them to agree to an interview, what to ask them, how to get the most information out of those interview subjects, and how to use that interview in your book, and many, many more things. So let's get started. Why would you want to interview someone for your book? Because it adds more credibility to your book. It's great that you have ideas and thoughts and case studies and histories and all of your accumulated knowledge. That's wonderful. That positions you as an authority. But when you interview someone else, you have even more credibility and more authority because their branding and their authority rubs off on you. So in my book, I quoted people like Jack Welch, the former president of General Electric, GE. And there's a picture of me and him in the book. And I also interviewed Ken Blanchard, who wrote The 1 Minute Manager and Who Moved My Cheese. And there's a picture of me with him in the book. Both of those interviews give me more credibility. So that's a great reason to have those kinds of people in your book. Now, granted, you may not have celebrities in your book like that, and we'll talk about the kinds of people you want to interview in a minute or so. Okay, so why else would you want to interview someone? Because it adds a new perspective. So it's not just you saying something with you and your 10 best tips. You're actually getting information from noted authorities who are validating your ideas as well and offering their perspectives on your ideas. So it adds a new perspective and new credibility. So who do you interview? We're talking about celebrities in your industry. So maybe the head of an association. It might be a university professor. It might be other authors or speakers or coaches or consultants. Those people have wide universes, wide platforms, and they could reach a lot of people, and a lot of people know them. So you want to include them in your book for their content and also, hint, hint, for their own platform, because they very well may tell their platform, their audience, their followers that they were interviewed in your book and they like your book, so they should buy your book. So another good reason to interview those kinds of people. So how do you find out about these people? Where would you find out about them? Well, you do your research. You can go to Google and type in, who is a thought leader on this subject? You can type, who is the most well-known person in my town on this subject? Those are two simple ways. You can read the newspapers and find out who's being quoted. When I say newspapers, I also mean blogs and articles and websites and other news sources, trade association publications and such like that. Those are the experts. And the people who are quoted, they know how to play the game. They want to get quoted. They're quoted in one publication, they want to be quoted in another publication. So definitely figure those people are the low-hanging fruit. You can also try using LinkedIn to search for people and then send out requests for them and tell them that you're interested in writing a book and would like to interview them. And I'll give you a few ways to contact people in another minute or two. Okay. Also, do research on the person beforehand. Look at their websites. Do a Google search on them. Find out information on them. So when you talk to them, you have a good idea of who you're speaking to and their background. You don't want to appear like, gee, tell me your story. And you say, well, gee, everyone knows my story, or it's on my website, or I'm bored about telling my story. You can impress them by letting them know that you know their story, and that'll build instant rapport. So let's talk about how to prepare for the interview. First of all, have a game plan. Why do you want to talk to them? What kind of information do you want from them? That's really important. You just don't want their name in the book for the sake of having their name in the book. You want them to add some real value. So you might ask them for some case studies or their stories. You might want to find their insights on important issues or how their insights on issues have changed over time. you might have read an article about where they were quoted, so you can go deeper and say, tell me more about this. And that way you get a different perspective and more information than is otherwise publicly available. How do you set up the interview? It's important to get their buy-in because these are busy people. Some people know how to play the publicity game and are very happy to meet with you. Other people need to be convinced. Let's talk about that second group, the ones who need to be convinced. Why would they want to be in your book? Well, being in your book gives them credibility. Let's talk about what's in it for them. So they can say, I was quoted in a book. So now they have credibility. You also need to establish the ground rules, like how much time is needed. So they may be able to talk to you for, say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but not for a half an hour or an hour. So that may be a point where they can say, yeah, I have 5 minutes. I can talk with you for 5 minutes. That's fine, but I just can't spend an hour on this because I have other things to do. And that's perfectly fine. They're busy people. Also, let them know about the format that you're going to interview them. Will it be in Zoom, in person, by email, a questionnaire, a phone call, anything else? So that's important, again, to set the ground rules so they know what to expect. I've spoken to many people who they say, is this going to be recorded on film? Because then they know whether to put makeup on or do their hair or whatever. So people are like that. So let them know and how to make it as easy as possible for them. When you're conducting the interview, here are 3 quick rules. Number 1, be polite. You are using their time, so respect their time. If you said 5 minutes or 10 minutes, then stick to that. If they say, no, that's okay, we have more time, this is fun, this is interesting, let's keep on talking, then that's fine. But otherwise, respect their time. And thank them. Thank them when you're speaking with them, and follow up with an email or a personal thank you note to thank them as well. So it's just good etiquette, and it's good marketing, because now you might be considered part of their network and they might be happier to promote you. So be polite. What would you ask them? Well, you might ask them what their biggest successes are and what they learned from it. You might ask them what their biggest failures were and what they learned from it. You might ask them who influenced you or inspired you and how did that impact your life. Now, granted, those are tight questions. They may not work with your book. They may work with some kinds of books and not with others. So think about the kind of information that you want from them. But here are 3 golden questions that will work in any situation. After they give you an answer, say, tell me more, and they will go deeper. You can ask them why, and they will go deeper. Say, can you give me an example? And they will go deeper. And frequently, that's where the best material is, because they give you a cursory answer at first, and then the deeper you probe, the deeper they have to think, and that's where the juice is. So keep on asking follow-up questions until you get what you want. Don't be afraid to ask, tell me more, several times until you get something that you feel that you can use. But don't be a pest. If they give you some body language that looks like, I've answered this, move on, then move on, because maybe you've mined that shaft as deep as it'll go and there's nothing else there, so move on. Another question you can ask them is, what else should I have asked you? They may have an answer, they may not have an answer, but sometimes you will ask a question and that will spark something in their brain that they want to go deeper into, and this is an opportunity for them to share that information. Now, what do you do with the material after you've recorded it, after the interview is over? Okay, well, first of all, you want to make them look good. So any kind of grammatical mistakes, punctuation mistakes, word choice mistakes, correct it. Correct it. So if they're going to say, I wanna, or I'm gonna, say I want to, or I'm going to. Make them look good. You can tighten their material. So a lot of times when we speak loosely. We speak in half sentences. We start and stop sentences. You don't even notice it during a conversation because our brains are adjusted to it and attuned to it, and we know how to react to it. But on paper, people don't look as polished. I'll just put it that way, myself included. I've had to edit my own transcripts and say, did I really say that? Also, some AI software, artificial intelligence software that does transcription is not very good. They repeat words a lot. They don't have proper punctuation. So don't rely on a transcript that was created by a computer to be accurate, I would say 80% of the time. It is worthwhile to have, and it's a good thing to have, but at the same time, you need to edit it. Now, when you're editing it, there are two ways to use the material. Number one, direct quotes. This is the real juicy material that they said in a way that only they could say it. Every word is polished, and it just rings and say, this is really great. Or they're making a strong declarative statement like, you must do this, or that's what I learned. And those are great for direct quotes. A lot of other things you can paraphrase and shorten and tighten up. And I like to say that the less you write, the more you are understood. So don't be afraid to cut out things that are irrelevant. Don't be afraid to cut out things that are duplicated or said several times over in several different ways. You'll be doing the reader a favor by condensing all of this information. So those are great tips on how to interview someone to make your book better. Be sure to watch my other video on how to capture your great ideas so you'll never have writer's block, so you can write your book in a flash.